Leading organisations in the education sector. And today we're going to be looking at both the challenges and opportunities for learners and for educational organisations. Sean Williams is the CEO of Corndel, and Professor Jane Harrington is the Vice-Chancellor of the University of Greenwich. Thank you both for joining us today and giving up your time for us for the next half an hour or so, guys. Welcome.
Pleasure.
Nice to meet you.
Great to have you both with us. Now, throughout the conversation today, if you're watching live, then please do feel free to feed your questions into us. You can do that by typing your question into the live chat on YouTube or on LinkedIn, and the CMI team will pick that up. And towards the end of today's session, they'll feed as many of those questions through to me, and we'll look to pose those questions to Jane and Sean wherever we have a chance to do so. But let's start, guys, just to think about the current situation. There's any number of predictions about the economic impacts of COVID, and a lot of the forecasts, of course, are talking about a long and drawn out economic recovery. But at the same time, in the UK, we have a well-documented skills deficit. So in these times, do you see this as a period of challenge or of opportunity for your learners and students? And Jane, perhaps we'll come to you first on this one.
Hi, thanks, Matt. Hi, everyone. Ultimately, I think it's both. But if I just start off by saying, I think if we get it right, it is a real period of opportunity. And I think it's really important to think about it that way. I mean, there's no, as the economy starts to recover, we're going to need people with high levels of skills more increasingly. And I think it would be an absolute mistake if we forgot that and had a complete lost generation. And we also know, that actually the types of students we need are those with professional and technical qualifications. And those are the very students that we need to be actually encouraging more and more. So it's a real opportunity to do that. I think also what the pandemic has taught us is to reprioritize. So we know that actually some of our professions, such as nursing, paramedics would be obvious ones, science would be another one, and technology. They're all areas actually where we're seeing increasing applications, and we've got increasing opportunities to really leverage that. And the final opportunity, I think, is that what the pandemic's taught us is that actually working together is better than working our own. So working across, for me, it's working with the councils, it's working with the local enterprise partners, but it's also really importantly working with private providers, with FE colleges and with other HE colleges, and recognising that actually if we're really going to come out of this, we need to do it together. So for me, I believe there is a huge opportunity, and it's up to us to make sure that we maximise that.
Absolutely. Great to hear about your views on so much opportunity there, Jane. Sean, what would you add to that question?
Yeah, look, all change brings opportunity. I don't think we should downplay the challenges. So we could be looking at 4 million unemployed people by the end of the year. We will undoubtedly see the destruction of certain industries, and that will create a huge upskilling challenge. So you take the jobs that are destroyed, and you take the people who used to work in those jobs, and then you take the new jobs that will be created, and make no mistake that this health crisis and then the ongoing economic crisis will create as many jobs as it destroys. But the challenge is how we help people to move from the old industries into the new industries. And of course, that is a skills challenge. And I would suggest that the skills areas, just to echo what's already been said, the skills challenge is around those people skills, management skills, and around those tech skills. And that's the combination that we need to get right for young people, for people who are made redundant, for people looking to change careers into the new jobs that will be created.
Indeed, thank you.
Yeah.
And so you both lead organisations that are renowned for the high quality of education that you provide. And I'm just interested to hear, Sean, you're leading the fastest growing training provider organisation in the UK. You're renowned for a culture of innovation. So how does that rub off onto the learners that you're working with? And in a moment, if I may, Jane, I'd really like to get your perspective as the Vice-Chancellor of a well-established global university. What are your tips for students who may be wondering if now is the right time to commence a new programme of learning? But Sean, first, in terms of the innovation.
Yeah, look, I think innovation's one of those often used words which can often be misunderstood. You have sort of have a centre for innovation or an innovation team, and I don't really think that's where it happens. I think it's all around culture. I think it's all around a sense of staff who can change things. I think we've all been in those organisations where you can find 100 things wrong, and by the way, there are 100 things wrong in every organisation. Right, but the difference is some organisations say, let's fix those things, and their staff believe they can fix them and they're empowered to fix them and try and fix them. And then there are those organisations where you see the 100 things wrong and everyone shrugs and goes, yeah, but there's literally nothing we can do about it. And so how do you create and foster that culture where people feel that sense of ownership and people want to change things for the better, and people feel they can change things for the better? And that for me is what I mean. Innovation doesn't have to be inventing Google. Innovation can be simplifying a form to make it better, but the productivity and the efficiency gains and just or making our jobs more interesting and happier that those things can bring, that to me is where innovation starts.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, great insights. And so Jane, is now a good time for people to be contemplating a new programme of study?
Yeah, I just want to actually, though, before I do that, just say I completely agree with what Sean said. Innovation is often seen as the latest best idea, whereas actually it can be some actually really what would feel like quite small, simple things that make a massive difference. But in terms of students, I mean, I want to go back to when Sean said in his first question, not to underestimate the challenges. We shouldn't underestimate the challenges that young people have had. They've had some real, for them, they've had their education completely turned on its head. And I know many of them are very anxious. And one of the things, so if I was talking about tips for students thinking about coming, I would say to them, have a look at what flexibility there is in the offering that you're looking at. So, for example, have they got a flexible accommodation offer? Have they got some skills training that's going to get you up to speed where you might be nervous about about having had a gap? Will they have support for your mental health? We know that young people are particularly vulnerable to mental health issues, and that's become very acute in this crisis. So have you got, so I'll give you an example where I am, access the campus. If you're someone who can't come on a campus, can you access the materials anyway? And what is the online provision? But finally, I'd say have a look at what else is on offer. Students don't just come to universities to sit in a classroom, they come for the experience. How are people adapting that? Is there going to be social space for you? Is there going to be activities? Well, how is that going to do? And my suggestion is it will feel different. I don't think any of us should pretend that. I think we're not telling the truth if we say it will be identical. But what I would say is have a look at how people have adapted. And also the important thing for me is we will come out of this, and people need to be skilled and trained when they come out. And it might feel very different for the first term, but there are other ways that you can foster identity and community. And the thing to look at is how is that fostered?
Mm-hmm. Great points, thank you. Okay, and so in recent weeks, we've discussed some of the potential upsides that have come out of this sort of turbulent year so far. One of those that we've discussed in previous Better Managers briefings is around the opportunity to ensure that the economic recovery is a truly sustainable recovery. Jane, what do you see as the role of your organisation in helping to make this happen?
Yeah, I think we can play a huge role. I think, first of all, there's a role that we should play as a as an institution that actually contributes or negatively or positively to sustainability itself in terms of its campuses and its buildings. And we've been doing a lot of work on that. We have a strategic approach to it. It's an all-staff approach, which I think is important. So it's not me saying sustainability is important. It goes down the whole of the institution. And then, and I'll give you an example. So the student union, who are very actively involved in this, told us that they were very unhappy about the buses that we were using to transport them from Medway campus to Greenwich. And we now have 2 electric buses as a consequence of that. So that would be one example. We've also been, we focus basically on trying to reduce negative impact and on continuously improving our work and practices. So it's if you like, the strategy is sort of two dimensions. But the one I really want to highlight actually is our Medway campus. There we have the Natural Resources Institute, where we have world-leading experts on sustainability. They are, for example, launching a Masters in Climate Change next year. And there, on that campus, they follow the United Nations Sustainability Development Goals, and that's embedded in everything they do. It's something that is taken up by the students and staff, and it goes from, so it's not just about the buildings and the physical side, it's about the teaching, it's about the research, it's about actually the actions that the students take alongside the staff. And for me, it's about having a strategic approach, and it's about having some very clear commitments of where you want to actually get to, and then working out how you deliver on those. And I think it's a real opportunity now to recognise that I don't believe young people will accept us not taking this seriously. I think they quite rightly will challenge us to actually act more quickly and faster than we have done historically.
I completely agree, and it's great to hear that your organisation is also role modelling that in the experience that people have on a day-to-day basis through the buses, as well as that dedication to the educational side and the research side of driving this forward. Sean, one of the things that CMI has talked about for a long time is the importance of diversity, and it's proven in all aspects of business that having diverse teams, diverse leadership plays a very important role in the success of organisations. And so I'm just really interested to hear your views on the role that Corndel is playing to help to really to really sort of trumpet the benefits of diversity, and how your learners are benefiting from that.
Yeah, prior to this health crisis, 90% of my staff were home workers. So we've always had a remote connected by technology model. And that is reflected, I think, then in our workforce. So, for example, 70% of our staff are women. The majority of our staff are working parents. And those working parents really benefit from, and we benefit from as an organisation, having brilliant people who choose to come to Corndel because we offer a hyper flexible, hyper empowered environment where you can choose when you do your work. You can choose where you do your work. And that actually disproportionately benefits some groups who've been disproportionately disadvantaged in the past by a, kind of industrial revolution 9-to-5 factory model. And if anything, I think that this crisis has shown, and has just been actually a catalyst for that model's been broken, since the mid 19th century. But it takes a crisis to really push us out and see what more can be done. And I think so on I think the flexible working, the working from home, the destruction of a kind of office presenteeism culture, which I really do think this will bring. I think that's a great thing for gender diversity, because unfortunately still disproportionately the burden of bringing up children falls on women. It's also, I think, that this Build Back Better I've been very struck with, and I think this is an opportunity to again look at organizations and say, well, this is what we were, we can't be what we were, but what can we be in the future, and is there a way of doing that better? And just to echo Jane's comments, that's all about data. So that's all about measuring how good you are at the moment, setting very clear targets for where you want to be, and then having very real tangible actions to move from that. So if I looked at Corndel, we set up a diversity board in response to the murder of George Floyd and the Black Lives movement, which deeply affected a lot of our students and indeed a lot of our staff. And as part of that, we tried to get much more data-led. And we say, okay, where have we got underrepresented groups in our staff? Where have we got underrepresented groups in our students? Where have we got underrepresented groups in our senior management team? And then very practical answers to those. And that isn't to set up another group or a task force. That is actually to employ more people from those groups, to promote more people from those groups. And that's a very hard, tangible action, which comes out of the data and out of, I think, out of tragedy, maybe some good can come.
Indeed. I mean, fabulous to hear the way in which you're tackling both gender and ethnic diversity and inclusion challenges with Corndel. And it's clear that you have a passion and that you firmly believe in the benefits of doing so for your business, but also the way in which that reach will extend into the organizations that your learners are working in and so forth. So fantastic to hear about that. Okay, and so thinking about those that are in the audience today, watching this broadcast, what would your advice be to the audience in terms of how they should prioritize both their own professional skills development and that of their teams, given the current volatility of our lives right at this stage? And perhaps, Sean, if we can lead off with you on this one.
So I think skills is everything. I think if you look at the opportunity, for example, for furloughed workers, a number of the businesses that we're working with have said, actually, furlough is a fantastic opportunity to be putting those workers on training courses and giving them more skills. What you don't want is people sat at home twiddling their thumbs watching daytime television. What you want to be doing is using that opportunity to upskill people so that they can come back with the new skills needed for the change shape of work. Very specifically, and it's not potentially surprising coming from a management and a technology training provider, but there's a reason we train management and tech, and it's because we think they're the two critical skills. And we see a particular intersection between managers needing to understand data and artificial intelligence, machine learning, and the new tools that are becoming available and the change that happen very quickly. But equally for technologists, software developers, DevOps engineers, to develop those management people skills to be able to communicate with a more generalist audience. So the two skills, again, perhaps not enormously surprising given the organization that I run, but genuinely for the future of the economy, the tech, the data skills for managers and leaders, and the management and people skills for the technologists. If you can bring those two together, I think it's an incredibly powerful combination for individuals and businesses.
Thanks, Sean. And no, I guess it's not surprising to hear you say that, but on the other hand, you're also making a very successful foray into this training. You're the fastest growing training provider in the UK with those sectors at the heart of what you're targeting. So, Jane, what would your views be regarding this?
Yeah, I'd actually share Sean's view. I think it's an absolute opportunity at the moment, and we shouldn't lose that, because I think it's really key that we actually, as I've already said, that we have people that come out of this trained. And one of the things that we've been doing is working with, I've been leading actually for the Royal Borough of Greenwich, a HEFE recovery group that is actually trying to understand what skills are needed. And it's quite right, I would completely concur with what Sean said. And also enterprise and digital skills are the other come up time and time again. And I think it's at the moment for some people, it's a real opportunity to upskill and reskill. And I think that's what we need to grasp, and we need to make sure that we provide very accessible short courses that are available at whatever level is needed for people to do that. So I completely share that view. I also think we need to look after ourselves in all of this, and we need to prioritize that. So I would also put quite a large emphasis on actually looking after our physical and mental health. I think it's very easy as leaders to forget to do that. I think at our cost, actually, we're not much use if we find ourselves unable to cope. And I think there's also, there's a lot of work that we need to do to make sure that our workforce are resilient and that they are actually, they feel as confident as they can be to come back into the workplace, be that working from home longer term or physically coming in. And so I think there's some real work we can do there. I also think the final thing I'd say is there's a huge plethora of actually free courses out there. So even companies that are really worried that they can't afford them, there is actually some accessible free courses, and it's an opportunity to actually take those up.
Here. I think all of those points are so important, and in many ways we're finding that our members are confirming that this is changing the strengths that they need to exhibit as leaders on a day-to-day basis, and that empathy and the human aspects of leadership. I think the recognition of the importance of those has really been accelerated through this period. Okay, well, in a moment or two, we're going to turn to some questions from the audience. And if you are watching live, just a reminder that you can ask a question through the live chat on the interface that you're watching on, and the team will pass those questions through to me. But before we go to audience questions, one last question from me, guys. When you reflect on the year so far, I wonder what you're most optimistic about for the future, and by contrast, what are you perhaps most concerned about in terms of the future? And Jane, if you could lead off on this one, please.
And I'm only allowed one, am I? My one, if I'm only allowed one, would be that I'm actually most optimistic about collaboration. I think that what this has taught us is that doing things on our own, always acting in competition with each other, is actually a model that just doesn't work in a crisis. And I hope, and I do believe, it's probably taught us that actually we're much better off. We're all much stronger if we work together. So I do, and that's been evident. Actually, it's been evident for me both in Greenwich and also in Medway and Kent, where our campuses are. What am I most concerned about? I'm most concerned that we don't allow this generation of students to be the forgotten generation. And I'm most concerned that we really need to work as hard at getting them into really meaningful employment as we do actually encouraging students to come into university. And I think that's really important. So they would be, if I'm only allowed one of each, they would be my two key ones.
Fantastic. Thank you. Sean?
I would echo Jane's points. We are moving into the biggest economic crisis for 100 years. It's going to be unprecedentedly bad, and what that means for unemployment, what that means for societal cohesion, particularly actually unemployment for young people, because we know the scarring effects for young people who don't get a job that lasts for the entire rest of their lives, in terms of mental health effects, in terms of lower wages, in terms of lower progression, in terms of more likely to be sustained unemployed. So that's the challenge. The last time we had an economic crisis, which wasn't as big as this, it led to the Second World War. So there are some pretty significant and serious challenges. The opportunity, again, to come to what Jane's saying, the opportunity is there's an opportunity to not do that and to come back much better. There's an opportunity to learn from the past and the mistakes that have been made and say we're not going to do that anymore. And I think cooperation's critical to that. Cooperation is critical to the economic recovery. International cooperation is critical to the economic recovery. It's also critical, of course, to the health recovery in terms of, and if you look at what what our scientists are doing with sharing information and the way that's worked and how they've worked individually across countries collaborating, I think that's magnificent. And so crises tend to bring out the best and the worst in us, and there's hopefully that opportunity to bring out the real best in humanity in terms of cooperation, in terms of supporting one another, and I'll come back to that and build it back better than it was before, and use the destruction as an opportunity to come back stronger and in a way which more reflects what we would want to be.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for your insights. We'll come back and revisit a couple of those in the summing up, but we're going to go to some audience questions for the next few minutes. And the first question comes from Tarek. Thanks, Tarek. Do you think, I beg your pardon, that the e-learning only approach, which may well be necessary in the near future, could have a negative effect on the reputation of students and graduates? I don't know, Sean, whether you'd like to take that one first. Yeah,
I don't believe in e-learning only at all. We talk about connected by technology. So people don't remember a great textbook. No one goes, oh, I remember when I was at school, that great textbook. People remember teachers. People, it's a human connection. Yeah. Maybe one day DeepMind and Google will crack this, but they're miles away from it at the moment. AI is miles away from the sort of human interaction that a really great tutor, a really great coach, a really great teacher can do. So I think technology is not there for an e-only experience. Technology is there to connect tutors, trainers, teachers, coaches, mentors to students in a different way, via Zoom or via YouTube or but it's connected by technology. It's not somebody doing just an online watch a 5-minute video and then do some accompanying questions. I think that's very it's very basic training. It doesn't give you the higher level skills you need, and it's certainly very difficult for a lot. Maybe that works for very, 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 very smart, self-motivated students, but for the majority of us, we need a bit more support.
Mm-hmm. Jane, your views?
Yeah, I 100% agree with Sean, actually. I don't believe in pure e-learning either. I think, just like he said, I think it's about connections. I think it's about relationships. I think it's about community and identity. And I think, so I suspect some of that question came from when I was saying you need to look at what's on offer. And what I would say is that what's on offer, certainly where I am, is it will be an approach which is what I would call a blended approach. So actually some of the things that would be more like a textbook, if you like, the lectures we can put online, I think that's fine. But what is critical is that the students then come together to discuss, to do case studies, to do work with them. And of course, lots of our courses have laboratories and simulations. And and the reality is we need to be able to provide those. So what we've been doing is we've been looking at how do you block that time so that you can do it in a way that works. So if there is let's say there is a second lockdown, we can actually provide those blocks before and after, and the students aren't negatively affected. So I would actually concur with everything that Sean said on that. I think we're a long way off being able to provide something that actually is completely distant in that sense.
Okay, thank you very much. So our next question comes from Janet, and Janet asks, how have your respective organisations responded or plan to respond to help those that are completing your courses find employment in whatever the new normal looks like?
Yeah.
Jane, do you want to take that one first this time?
No, it's fine. I mean, we've got a whole range of things that we had in place and we're putting in place. So first of all, our employability and career service is open for 3 years after someone's graduated. So students can access a huge range of skills training, workshops and one-to-one sessions there. We also have a very large alumni network, and there was a call out actually at the start of the pandemic for them to offer coaching and also to offer internships. And we now have a very large range of those, and that's proving very successful. We also have an enterprise hub. So some of our students are actually looking at setting up their own enterprise initiatives, and we're putting more money into that to support more students to do that. And we also have what we call graduate teaching demonstrators. So for students who have fantastic skills, but they need a year or so before they can move out of the university, there's some opportunities there. So I think it's not just one thing. We're trying to package it. We've also, as I was saying earlier, working with both Royal Borough of Greenwich and with Medway councils, so that we can actually try to leverage every opportunity that there is and work with them very closely. And because that is what I'm very, very, very acutely conscious we've got to get right for our students. We owe it to them.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and Sean.
Probably most significantly, we've just formed a joint venture with Adecco. Adecco, the second largest human services firm in the world. We've called that Adecco Working Ventures. It's a 50-50 partnership between Corndel and Adecco. And we will be working with the Department for Work and Pensions across the UK, trying to come up with and then deliver the large-scale back-to-work programs that are going to be necessary as a result of the economic crisis coming out of this health crisis.
Fabulous. That sounds an incredible initiative. And I guess just a reminder to everybody watching that if you're on a CMI program with Corndel or with Greenwich or other partners of CMI, you have access to CMI materials, which I can't resist plugging at this stage because they are proven to help with mobility and so forth. We've got time just for one last question, and this one comes from Yatin. And he says that during hard times, training budgets are often the first to get cut within organisations. So what advice would you give to managers to help persuade those in their organisations to not do that and to continue investing in their workforce? Sean, would you like to give us a view on that?
Yeah, so let me a very tactical answer, which is if you're in the UK and you're a large employer, you'll be paying the apprenticeship levy tax. Most organisations are not spending that apprenticeship levy tax, and that then just means it goes back to Treasury. So very tactically, if you're working for a business which is paying the apprenticeship levy, make sure you are using that tax to train your staff. It's a complete no-brainer. More generally, and related to why that tax was introduced, those companies that survive and thrive in the medium to long term are those that invest in their staff. They are the high-skilled organisations. Now, I mean, again, I could go on and on about this around, you know, it is short-term city capitalism which stops people understanding that. Family-owned firms carry on investing in their staff and invest in training because they've got a long-term incentive. It's where you've got CEOs of companies who are reporting to the city every 3 months that creates a very, very bad system of short-term incentives. And shareholders and staff and all stakeholders should be pushing to stop taking a 3-month view, a 6-month view. If you want to come out of this economic crisis strong, and indeed the organisations that will come out strong will be those that continue and indeed accelerate their training for the new skills that are going to be needed in the new world going forward.
Here. Thank you for that, Sean. Jane, anything that you'd like to add?
Well, I think that's the sort of perfect answer, Sean. So, because I agree with that. But and I think if you're trying to persuade your manager, it's also, I think there is a reality for some companies about a short-term cash crisis. So I think for me, it's about also recognizing that there are lots of courses out there that don't cost a huge amount of money, and it's accessing those. And so it's because I don't think the time is the issue; it's the cash. So I think that, so for me, it's about how do you, if you really have to persuade someone who actually is saying we've literally got no money, then I think it's about actually demonstrating to them that there are courses that could be done that are very cheap or free indeed in some cases.
Fabulous. Well, look, thank you both so much for giving us your time today. Some fantastic insights in all that you've said. And there's a whole host of takeaways for me from today, but it's very clear to me after our conversation that whilst these are tough times and we're anticipating tough times for a while yet, there are huge opportunities around the development of skills, and that it's very important that organisations that strive to survive and come through this in a better state are going to be the ones that will continue to invest. And I think as organisations, as educators, we've got to make sure, as Jane said, that we don't allow this generation to be the forgotten generation of learners, and that investment in the skills and the deficit that we currently have is now more important than it ever has been. Thank you again to both of you for joining us today, and I hope that you've all enjoyed watching today's session. Anne will be back next week for Better Managers on Friday, 1:15 p.m. UK time, and I hope that you do take the opportunity to explore a little bit more of what CMI has to offer by clicking on the links in the live chat. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.